Welcome to the Zentangle Project Pack series. This lesson is part of Project Pack number 18. It's my favorite number. My name is Martha.
And I'm Molly.
We will be using the materials from our Project Pack number 18 envelopes, as you see here. Project Packs are available at zentangle.com and from some of our certified Zentangle teachers. We do recommend watching the Project Pack number 18 introduction video first, very important, before you start on these lessons, as we are working with a new exploratory materials and we share useful information about these materials and tips on how to use them in those videos.
We are super pumped to be using this project pack to introduce a new surface to tangle on. This is like, very
cool.
exciting. You know, we explore many new surfaces here at HQ all the time, so it's like when we finally stumble upon one that we want to take to the next level, that's always fun. We are calling this new tile the translucency tile. All the lessons in this project pack are going to be using these tiles, but if you do not have these tiles at home, all of these lessons could be done with any surface you can find in your home and with any tools that you can find in your home. So we always encourage people to follow along with whatever they can find. Right, Martha?
Ready to get started?
I think so. Let's do it. So I've already kind of taken out my tools here from my Project Pack 18 envelopes. Fun stuff. We have enclosed quite a few cool tools here, and we're going to be using most of them, I think, except for the green jelly roll. I don't think we'll be using that today, and actually maybe not the pastel pencils. We'll see what happens, but that's my plan. So
have them all black and white and shades of gray.
Have them available because you never know what inspires you. You might go in a different direction than me, and that's actually quite fun. As usual, once we get all our tools ready, and hopefully you have a comfortable place to draw and a nice maybe surface to put your tools on, and a nice chair or pillow or something that you're sitting on, or maybe you're even standing. That might be nice too. But what we'd like to do once you have your space and your materials and your body comfortable, we always like to take a moment for gratitude and appreciation, which is the first step in the Zentangle Method.
So important.
Right? So however you may honor that step, whether it's gently closing your eyes, pausing for a moment, taking a few deep breaths, or just maybe a little smile that makes you feel like you're aware of something that you're grateful for in this very moment. Martha and I are going to be working together here, and I have showed you that we have one pen here I'm going to be starting with, the Micron 10. It's a black pen. In case you haven't noticed, this tool grouping has two black pens. One is a 10 and one is a 01, and that's actually kind of confusing. So just
at a quick glance, they look very similar.
Yeah, my eyes tend to flip things, so I have flipped them many times. But this pen is quite a bit thicker, so if you're wondering, we're using this kind of fatter bullet tip pen to begin with. And as always, when you're doing a class with us, especially with a video, you have the option to just watch and digest the lesson first. So if you want to just hang out and see what's happening and then follow along after, you can always rewind and watch it again. So I have this beautiful new surface, which is like a vellum, like almost like a fake vellum, almost like a skin, but it's got some translucency to it. So if you were to take something and put it up, see how you can see through it in this beautiful, almost like frosted kind of way. It's very, very cool.
Mystery, which I love.
I know. It allows the light to pass through, which is really neat. So we'll be playing with that a little bit. So I'm going to begin on my tile with some really basic bold strokes, and then I'm going to be layering both sides of the tiles and playing with some fun textures. So here, this is how I'm going to get started. I'm going to begin by working right in the center of my tile here. I'm going to draw a straight line, and I'm going to start not quite to the top, and I'm going to end not quite to the bottom. So something like that. Nothing too exact. I want a little bit of space here and a little there for my composition. And then I'm going to do another one approximately through the middle. so that we have a cross of sorts. And then I'm going to divide it up once again by going straight through the middle, nice and slow because you want to hit that intersection point. If that's not exact, don't worry about it. And then one more through the last one, something like that. So I'm going to create somewhat of a star here, and this is like is something I used to draw often as a kid. I think it's on like every book and notebook I ever drew. So this style of making a star. And the way I used to do it was just like this, where I would create first a cross and then an X through it. And then I would put dots halfway in between each of these spaces. And now I'm going to go from the dot to these points, creating sort of like, what's it called, a spire? Is that what that's called?
Sure.
And just taking that dot and creating a peak. This can be done a lot of different ways, and you just pick one way and do it. This is the way I've done it.
I actually love how even if you're trying to make all of those line segments the same, they're really not going to be the same if you're not using a ruler, and so
nice.
you get that hand-drawn
Yep.
sweetness to it, like a snowflake.
Yeah, and I kept it loose, and I think that it does give it character. I'm glad you pointed that out, Martha. I like starting off with this nice inky pen. It's kind of fun. Because this paper is a little bit more non-porous than porous, it's different from other cotton papers, the ink tends to stay on the surface of the paper and it tends to stay a little bit wet. So just be aware of that as you're drawing. So now I'm going to go from the center to these little divots or valleys to kind of divide that up. Just taking your time. Notice how I turn my tile after every stroke, making the next stroke as comfortable as possible. Where my hand is actually doesn't very much move when I'm drawing. I kind of keep it in the same place. It's the paper that moves more than my hand does. All right, so that's kind of cool. Your basic star. Right, Martha?
Yeah, no, it's gorgeous.
Okay. And when I started off, I went almost to the edges, and that made it like, nice and big, with also sitting on here and composed quite nicely. So as I said just a minute ago, you want to be aware of the dry time with something like this. So you just want to make sure that it's dry. And you can usually see a little sheen, which will help you tell if it's dry or not. And then once it is dry, I'm going to turn it over, which is kind of fun because you can see through. So I've turned my tile over, but you can actually see that bold stroke through with a little bit of frostiness. And I'm going to switch gears, and I'm going to be using my Jelly Roll pen. Now, as you know from watching the introductory video, you learned a little bit about how some of these tools behave on these surfaces, and some of them are tricky. We're like experimenting. We love the Jelly Roll effect on these, so you kind of got to work with it, but it does sometimes get almost like a little bit stuck. And what we're recommending for that is to have a scrap piece of paper nearby. And I have some like Post-it notes here that I'm playing with. But anything, copy paper, I like a Post-it note because I can kind of stick it right next to me. Can you see it there? And I'm just kind of playing around, using that as my blotter. And we're going to do a bunch of dots. I want you guys to get lost in these dots for a little bit, and it creates this beautiful texture, and it's one of my favorite things I've discovered on these tiles. So We may time lapse ahead because it is a very repetitive action. So maybe you pause the video for a moment and maybe you put on some classical music or something that feels good. But basically what we're going to be doing is creating a series of little dots that are smushed along with one another. And I feel like once I get the pen rolling on this paper, it just goes. But if you do feel like you're having a hard time, getting momentum going, first of all, maybe try to just keep going. And then if it doesn't go or flow, shall we say, then, give it a little squiggle on another piece of paper until it starts going. And then try it again. Sometimes with the Jelly Roll pens, I also will have my pen just a slightly more upright than I do normally. Because I don't know if it's something about the flow of the ink, but that definitely helps.
I love how the white dots, they respect one another. They don't really spread out too much, so it's this kind of interesting play. It's play.
Love that, Martha. They respect one another. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to just be doing the dots within the boundaries of this beautiful star shape. So I haven't quite got to the circumference yet. Is it called a circumference?
I'm just thinking about that. I'm not sure. Let's call it a perimeter.
Yeah,
maybe
sorry about that. I was thinking maybe that's not what it's called.
That's okay. It made me think about it. So
yeah, maybe we'll have to look.
Circle thing.
Only a circle?
Sounds about right.
Maybe on those like fancy TV shows they have like fact checkers.
Maybe.
Can you check on that for me?
I can actually check on it. Would you like me to check?
So allow yourself this time when you have a part of your tile that's, you just get lost in a little bit of that flow state. Allow yourself to find a pace that feels good for you. Remember to have a breath that's nurturing and calming. Perhaps you have like a certain, kind of rhythm you like to follow. And I like to mix up the size of these orbs. I think that kind of plays with the texture a little bit. And adding texture to your tiles is so cool, and combining it with other tangles.
It's also a good reminder that simple is sometimes complex.
Right.
It could be your most favorite part of a tile because it's calming to look at and it balances some of the tangled chaos that sometimes happens on a tile. And I just love the balance that it offers.
Remembering to keep that grip on your pen loose. All right, I have been kind of putting my dots in here and kind of enjoying the quiet and the flow. Just taking my time, remembering to breathe, keep my pen grip nice and loose. I find that if I have a nice rhythm with my pen, that the ink seems to flow quite nicely on these tiles. But if you do pause for a minute, I feel like it's good to kind of get it started again on that scrap piece of paper. Kind of fun to use those lines that are seeping through from the other side as a guide. So beautiful. It's almost like something from the ocean, right?
I know, you could stop now. I
I
mean,
know,
seriously
right? We
could.
could
It's
all
just
just
it's
stop right now.
beautiful. So
But we're
beautiful.
gonna keep showing you stuff, and then you can always go back and do it again. So as we spoke earlier, in this process, we're always gonna try to make sure our ink is dry before we do anything else. The white seems to dry much faster than that green, or it's not always green, sorry. The metallic pen, that one seems to take a long time to dry, so you're gonna wanna be careful with that one. But my my white jelly roll seems to be fairly dry right now. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to
Which pen are you using,
oh, thanks,
Molly?
Martha. I'm gonna pick up my black 01, my Micron 01, the black one. And I'm gonna just do an outline all the way around. So I'm just kind of starting to work my layers again. I do notice with these tiles that the more like heavy, I did all these dots around it. So that tends to sometimes make it curl a little bit. And so you might kind of just roll it the other way. So I'm just outlining. I like to play around with the strokes coming towards me, so I usually turn my tile so that I can do that. That feels good to me, but whatever works for you. And I'm being a little careful not to rub my hand over the jelly roll just in case there was any wet gel ink. And the Micron goes over the jelly roll pretty nicely, so you don't have to worry about that. Remembering to breathe. Just focus on every stroke at hand. Finding a place to begin and following to a place to end. One more. Okay. And that's kind of pulling it together a little bit more, but I'm just going to add one more little detail here before I hand it over to Martha. I'm just going to kind of put a little bit of almost a crease in here where these corners come. So I'm not going to go all the way in, but I'm just kind of just adding a little depth. So right from the corner and adding a little weight there. It's amazing how little details like this change your work. And maybe you would have never thought to do something like this, but it just sort of pulls it together a little bit.
Well, it really makes that star kind of on purpose.
Right? Any little cleaning up you might want to do on here. Maybe a little rounding.
It is certainly taking on a starfish quality.
Right? All right, so I think that's pretty good for now. And I'm gonna hand this over to Martha before I add any shading to this, and we're gonna show you guys something else.
Thank you, Miss Molly.
You're welcome.
I am going to take this beautiful sort of starfish looking creature. It's kind of what I'm going with for now. And I am also going to be using the Micron 01 pen, the black 01. And just as a reminder, as we're working on this surface, that all of these tools will kind of react differently on this surface than they do on paper, and so feel free to kind of use your little blotter on the side to wipe your nib down from time to time if you feel like things are getting stuck a little. So I'm going to demo a tangle called Ravel, and it's going to add some sort of organic-y, sort of seaweedy lines behind my starfish. And everybody has their own little personality, I think, that when they do this tangle. And this is kind of how mine has evolved over a little bit of time. So I think I'm going to focus right here on this one little corner here to work in. And I'm going to start just by drawing a line towards the center. And Ravel is just a series of strokes that go from one tip of the line to the other tip. And as you repeat this, what happens is this wonderful sort of redefining point each time you draw this shape, and you get this kind of interesting inky detail. I love that about it. So then I'm going to pick another point. Maybe it's this point right here, but it doesn't have to be an exact, star tip to star tip. And just draw another little, it's kind of these little petal pods, or sometimes the stroke will tuck underneath another. And these little pod shapes can be of different lengths, and they grow so organically. Your tile is not going to look anything like mine when we're finished, because you're going to be picking different points and different endpoints. And you'll see that by joining these little petal pods, I have no idea why I'm calling it that right now. It's just what popped into my head.
They're ravelings.
So you have these sort of triangular shapes that are left behind, and as your ravel unravels, you'll have more and more of these. And what I'm going to choose to do, and I'm showing you now so that you can either fill them in as you go, or you can wait till you're finished. But I'm going to squish an orb into this triangular shape. And just inking in these little areas, just adding a tiny bit of dramatic element to what is really just a lot of lines. Some of my orbs are going to be bigger than others. And remember, when we're working on these new tiles, we're looking for opportunities where light can shine through, whether from the back or when you flip it over. So anytime you add an open space, it's this wonderful opportunity to let it jump out at you when you're looking through the tile. So I'm gonna dance around coming close to the edge of my tile with these ravel pods, these little petally pods. I'm not going all the way to the edge, but I'm going to go fairly close. Sometimes I go back and add a few more lines to a previously drawn pod, and it kind of starts to give them a little bit of a layered look as well. I'm kind of enjoying how each line feels different going down on this surface. And then going back into these spaces, drawing a nice big fat orb. I love how the ink, it really flows nicely to fill in spaces of it. Different than paper.
Right? It does feel different. It's kind of this neat new little adventure we're on.
Mm-hmm. You might even pause and kind of have a peek on the other side and just see how things are looking. Isn't that so neat? Oh yeah, very cool.
A little inspiration.
Right? And I think you're purposely not going all the way to the edge, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you can, as I was saying, you can sort of dance close to it here and there if you like, but we do have something that we're thinking of that would inspire you to perhaps not go all the way to the edge. How's that?
A lot of times my tiles get broken up and I have to, do a little bit and then do a little more. And that's okay too. If you have to just, maybe it takes you 5 days to finish one tile, but there's nothing wrong with that. So whatever your rhythm is or your allowed time is, just go with it, enjoy it. I always feel like I'm just grateful for any little pocket of time I have. And then there's the times where I actually completely lose track of time.
I was going to say, I'm just going to sit down for 10 minutes and work on this 2 hours later. So we're making our way around our beautiful star, and you can see how I've left some of these edges white or clear as the tile may be. And just going to finish up here with a few more paws. I'm going to bring this one all the way to the edge, just sort of don't want it to have the same rule everywhere because that would be kind of predictable, wouldn't it? Always turning your tile for a new perspective, especially when you're working with organic tangles. Gives you that reference point to either ignore or inspire you to do something a little bit differently. Something kind of soothing about the abstractness of everything, where you have to kind of dig into your own ideas as to what it feels like, instead of somebody saying, well, make this look like that, and then it will be perfect. So, let's see. Okay, I lied. One more. It's hard to know when to stop sometimes.
Right.
Always trying to fit one more in. All right, so I think I'm happy with that.
Nice.
But just to keep on going with our whole, different ways of thinking about seeing through to the other side. So here again, here's our little reference points, starting to look really interesting.
Right.
And I love how there's these big bold strokes here that become soft and gentle on the other side. And so I'm going to play around with that idea a little bit and use this Micron 10, big fat pen.
The 10.
And I'm actually, just to do myself a favor, I'm going to pick one corner that I'm not going to put ink on and use that as where I hold this tile down. So I'm not going to put it on this corner, but I'm going to start to just fill in the edges. And I know this might seem tedious.
Well, and yours is going to be very different from hers. So it's like everybody's a little bit coming at this with a different composition. And filling in can be maybe tedious, but it also can be a nice just like zone out time. Just playing with like how strong ink can play into a composition.
Well, and we've got this fat pen, which can be challenging to do up close and detail work, but because Ravel is Ravel,
when you come up close with the big fat pen, you don't actually have to go up to meet the edge because it just appears like another stroke in the ravel.
Oh, tricky, Martha.
So take a deep breath and see how you don't have to be so precise at that edge because it just becomes part of the tangle. So this part, even though it seems like this overwhelming amount of ink to go down, it goes pretty quickly with this pen. It's kind of awesome pen.
I was going to say that. I like that pen. It's pretty juicy and kind of flows pretty quickly.
Kind of get your own process to something like this too. You can see how I sort of bite off chunks and fill it in what feels safe to me.
And with any of these tiles, we're just like trying to like show you potentially what you can do. But like Martha said in the beginning, you could have just left that star as it was. If that simplicity feels good for you and the time you had put into that, like maybe that was enough for you, and you didn't have to add in all the extras that we did. So always know that everything is an option. You can always choose different ways to do things.
And then, as I said, I left that one area kind of purposely with no ink. It's just kind of how I see the tile right now, but feel free if you're looking for a little more balance or equilibrium on the tile, you could color yours into every edge, but I actually just kind of like the offsetting of that part of it right there.
Beautiful.
Yeah. All right, so I don't know, what do you think? One little last touch?
I think it might end up being more than one, but we'll see what happens.
Okay, let's see what happens next. So I think just to balance out some of this big, bold darkness that we've put in, we were thinking that we would go back and just add a little bit more with this white fun jelly roll and just further highlight these beautiful orbs that we put down. So here I have my white jelly roll, and I'm going to get it warmed up on the side again here on my little piece of paper on the side. And working my way, I'm going to make sure I work in one direction so that things can be drying along the way, because you just don't want to be touching any of these areas as they dry. So again, just takes a second to get it warmed up. And I'm not going to go all the way to the edge with that orb. It doesn't really need to. Just filling in using these nice light touches, keeping that gel ink flowing.
I love how the white shows up on the tile.
Yeah, it's really just starting to let all these different elements start to talk to each other. You know, when you bring in an element from a previous tangle or feature on your tile, it's kind of fun to pull them all together at the end. Again, turning my tile, I'm working in one direction. You know, I'm right-handed, so I'm working this way, but whatever makes sense for your tile. Making sure the back of my hand doesn't touch the tile.
Beautiful.
Well, and some of you will have more orbs, or fewer orbs, or bigger orbs. And that's when that personality really shines through.
Personality.
Shines through, get it?
Right? I think we get a little punchy at the end of these tiles.
I know. Well, as you know, this has kind of been a secret for a while, and we've enjoyed all of our research and development on this end, but it's been a tough secret to keep, actually.
It is challenging because there is a lot of time that passes from when ideas come up
in at HQ, and then as they develop, and then when we have to have it completed in order to get it internationally and produced and shipped around the world, it's like a lot of time that passes. So
So if you have room in your little Ravel pods, if you think it adds to your tile, I'm just adding little tiny dots. It doesn't seem like much, but just down that center little space of each one of the pods. Actually, it doesn't even have to be the exact center. It's just sort of this little fun highlight. Tiny little dots, kind of the quicker the better. The gel pen likes that. You can probably see even other possibilities. Perhaps you want to bring in one of those jewel colored jelly shadow pens. What are they called? Silver shadows.
Silver shadow. Yes.
Silver shadow could be a lovely accompaniment to this. But I kind of like the black and white. Oh my goodness.
That's good.
I think it's done.
Way to shade it.
Oh, Molly.
Martha.
I was only teasing.
Joking.
Again, just kind of along each step along the way, kind of appreciating that front and back. Which is the front and which is the back? I'm not going to tell you.
She's trying to skip my favorite part.
No, I'm only joking.
So let's make sure that our jelly rolls are dry, and we're gonna add a little graphite.
Yeah,
here.
let's give this a second to dry, and we're going to be adding some final touches.
All right, I think it's time we add a little bit of graphite here. So I want to bring some definition to some of this see-through stuff and then just darken some of the edges. And when I tell you I love the way these white dots look
really so sweet.
with the graphite, it's like just, I don't know, it's very, very cool. So we actually explored a little bit of this like graphite with jelly roll. And I believe it's project pack number 8, which is one of my favorite project packs in a very unexpected way. We used these jelly rolls and just had a bunch of fun with it. So what I'd like to do now is just kind of take my pencil, and I am using it on its side, but just kind of redefining the line a little bit, working my way around. Almost like I'm going over it a few times, but one stroke in other places, so whatever works for you. Finding your flow, just taking your time.
It's such an enjoyable experience, that graphite on the translucent
Right.
tiles.
The graphite does move around quite nice on these tiles. I think I skipped one right here. And then I'd also like to, just gonna tip the points here a little bit.
Make sure you have a nice sharp pencil.
Right, does guide you nicely. And what we're doing is not using that sharp point to actually dig into the paper, but using it to guide and put a nice edge on what you're doing. So it's like you have your pencil on the side, but the point allows you to get a nice sharp edge. I'm gonna add a little bit of love in the middle here, because I can. And I think I'll start there. My tortillon, just kind of softening that. And I'm just going right back over those pencil lines that we just put in. Yeah, I love, love, love the way it kind of starts to come together. So I'm just going to take now, no new pencil, but I'm just going to take the tortillon kind of by itself and run the edges. Oops, sorry, I'm kind of dancing my way around the surface here.
I think you can really appreciate this once you start to kind of hold it up and back on different angles of
Right.
light, because it has so much reflection. It is truly faceted.
I know, right? It's fun. So that actually changed it a lot. Sometimes I just kind of rub my finger on top too, just to blend it. Not quite as much as the tortillon, but just a little bit. If you're willing to get your finger a little dirty, but. Nice. All right, I think I'm pretty happy with that. And now I'm going to add a little bit of graphite to the ravel as well. Let's see here. I think I'm going to just play with so I'll do like a few just to show you, and then we'll go back around. Putting them in these points here. A little overlap there, so I might play with that. Blends so nicely. That is the thing about this paper. The graphite just sinks into it, which is nice. And then we'll dance around this ravel. I do plenty of tiles that are kind of very quick, but it's the ones that I kind of have this opportunity to build a relationship with that I just end up falling in love with. And I love those little dots you put in, Martha. Those are great. So once you have all your graphite down, you can kind of take your time and blend it into the surface. Breathing. And yeah, this kind of little bit that Martha left undone is a nice touch too, so that's good. Remembering that compositions can be curiously open in certain areas, and that can add to the, balance of everything. Wow, that is super coming together.
I love it.
So great.
Beautiful
so
job.
I think we're pretty much done, Martha. Sometimes I like to hit these edges with a little graphite. Anything you can do to add a little love here and there. Throw your chop on there, and I would say we're done, Miss Martha. What do you think?
Gorgeous.
I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Thanks for
for joining
joining us.
us.
Bye-bye.